All right, welcome back, fellow scientists. So as I say that, I am reminded that this is the second to last notes video of your anatomy and physiology class. So we'll obviously take notes on this video. Next week, Tuesday, I'll have a video that you can watch from, I think it's Discovery Education, called The Ultimate Guide to Pregnancy. I'll have an assignment that goes along with that. On the next week, Thursday, we're going to talk about different ways that Christians can steward their fertility, if that's something that God has blessed you with. And that'll be our last notes video next week, Thursday. And then the week after that, we'll just do a review session, and then we'll have our test, and that'll be it. And then we get to go into summer. And some of you seniors get to participate in graduation, such as it is. And then you guys go get to be adults, and you get to start the rest of your lives, which is kind of amazing and kind of scary, right? All at the same time. So this is bittersweet. This is like, yay, it's the end, but it's like, oh, it's the end. Like, yeah, okay. So, anyways, having said that, no, oh yeah, other programming note. There will be an assignment for this week. I'll just make a discussion board on LMS RenWeb that asks one thing you learned during the male physiology video, one thing you learned during the female physiology video. So, having said all that, got all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in. Oh, actually, no, there was one more thing. Sorry, this is the second time I'm making this video because I messed up before. So other videos, I mentioned that females are a little bit more complicated than males. And so I want to back that up scientifically. I don't want you to think that I'm some kind of like 1960s sexist, the females place is the home, blah, 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 blah. Not at all. So National Institutes of Health tells us this story. To get a drug, like a pharmaceutical drug, any drug like penicillin or whatnot, through like available to the public, it has to be FDA approved. To be FDA approved, you have to go through different phases of drug trials, right? Well, researchers realized early on that with the rise and fall of the hormones, the monthly cycle, females were a lot more complicated than males, and so they just did their drug trials on males and they excluded females. So I knew that part, but then I was always curious, like, when did that actually stop? According to the NIH, it started to kind of like people realized there was a problem in the 70s. It happened with this drug thiolamide, right? It was a sedative, never used in the United States, widely used in Europe and Canada. Just tested it on males, worked great. Then they actually got approved by their governing bodies and their agencies, and then they used it on females who were pregnant, and those babies were born with horrible limb deformities, right? And so that was like the thing that researchers like, oh, we should probably include women in our drug trials because women are people too, right? It's like, yeah, no kidding. You should have realized that from the beginning. So let's see, 86 NIH established a policy, right? And this is recent history, right? Like I'm not very old, I don't think, at least. And I was born in 1980. So like this happened during my lifetime. Probably not during your lifetime, but that's okay. Yeah, you guys were born in the new millennium. But anyways, 1990, so it becomes law to include females in drug trials for every drug between 89 and 93, at least here in the United States. So anyways, that's the reason why I say that females are more complicated, because like medically, like they are. It's true. It's not yeah, it's not some sort of bent or bias just on my part. All right, so having said that, hopefully I cleared that up. Hopefully I didn't muddy the waters. Let's go ahead and let's talk about oogenesis. So spermatogenesis, right, in males starts at puberty and then can go through their entire lifetime. Oogenesis, production of eggs, this actually starts before birth, right? So females, when they're born with all of the eggs that they'll have for their entire lifetime. So all of the eggs for their entire lifetime have already gone through meiosis one, and it's kind of paused right in between meiosis one and meiosis two until puberty starts. Then at puberty, then one oocyte per month is matured and allowed to go through meiosis two, and then becomes a full intact egg that has the potential to be fertilized. That'll last until menopause, when hormones change and everything like that. And then at menopause, then menstrual cycle stops and ovarian cycle stops as well. So this is the ovarian cycle, and so we're going to start right down here. Right, there's a group of primary follicles, and then hormones make them grow. I don't know if science actually understands how one oocyte is picked or how one follicle is picked, but one follicle per month is selected and grows and grows and grows and grows. And all of this, as you can see, is governed by hormones, blah, 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 blah. And then the egg being released from the ovary is ovulation. Now, years past, I've asked Dr. Whistler, the local OBGYN, to come in and to kind of share his wisdom and kind of his like a day in the life of, and this is how you can actually use this information, and this is how he uses this information. And he brings in some amazing pictures from surgery. Last year, he actually brought in a surgery that he did with like a robot. Like seriously, no kidding. He was there in the hood with the robot, and then the patient was on the table and the robot, and he brought in the video of a hysterectomy, of removal of a uterus, and it was absolutely amazing. But other pictures that he brings in from surgery, he brought in a picture of someone's ovary that had just ovulated, and you could actually see the site where the ovulation took place, where the egg was released from the ovary. I'm told that some females can actually feel when an egg is released from an ovary, and they feel which side is, because typically only one side, one yeah one ovary on one side releases an egg for 1 month, and then the next month it's the other ovary, and then the next month it's the other ovary. So anyways, so ovulation, it's a thing, it happens. And one thing that's really interesting is so cool. And again, this is from Dr. Zwissler. You'll notice that there's no like solid firm connection between the fallopian tube and the ovary, right? So this is basically open to the inside of the body cavity. So there's a chance that a female ovulates, and then the egg just is kind of lost to the body cavity, and then it's viable for 24 hours. Um, but then after 24 hours, then it just kind of dies and decays and gets recycled. So again, Dr. Zwissler said that we don't know how this works, but somehow these ovarian tubes, they're made of smooth muscle, and they can actually move and they can actually sense where that egg is going to be released from the ovary, because it doesn't happen in the same place every single time. And they can actually move and they can actually find that place and be ready to receive that egg from that ovary, which is just absolutely fascinating. All right, but I digress. I'm getting ahead of myself. So ovulation occurs, and then here we have the empty follicle, which turns into something called the corpus luteum, right? And the corpus luteum releases its own hormones, and then if fertilization occurs, then with hormones, fertilized eggs sends a signal to ovary, corpus luteum, and it says, "Hey, you need to stay good. You need to continue. You need to continue releasing hormones." So if fertilization occurs, then this stays. And if no fertilization occurs, then this kind of degrades and goes away and stops releasing hormones. And then the whole cycle happens over again. All right, so that's the ovarian cycle. So now let's go ahead and let's talk about if fertilization occurs, or let's talk about the process of fertilization possibly happening. So each fallopian tube is about 4 inches long. The egg moves down the tube by the action of cilia. They're kind of, remember, cilia are like little hairs on cells, and they're kind of moving. Remember the mucus elevator, right? From the trachea, it kind of moves mucus up towards the nose and mouth to be expelled. So same kind of thing, right? It kind of moves the cilia, kind of moves the egg along. This journey takes about 3 to 4 days, right? And the egg enters the fallopian tube, and it's viable only 24 hours after ovulation. So doing the math, where does fertilization occur? Right, fertilization occurs in the tube, which brings me to, it's not really a common homeostatic imbalance, but it's common enough, right, that sometimes the fertilized egg will get stuck in the tube, right? I don't know, like primarily if it's just the egg divides too rapidly and the tube is too small, or if it gets stuck in like a fold, or if it gets stuck in malfunctioning cilia or something like that. But if a fertilized egg gets stuck in a fallopian tube, then that's called an ectopic. It's right down here. It's called an ectopic or tubal pregnancy, right? And that is a very sad case because depending on when you think life starts, which we're going to talk about on Tuesday next week when you watch the Ultimate Guide to Pregnancy, depending on when you think life starts, if you think that life starts at conception, now you're faced with a horrible choice. You could let the pregnancy proceed and the baby would grow in the fallopian tube and then eventually cause complications that would lead to the mother's death. Or you could do surgery and then remove the fertilized egg from the fallopian tube, save mom's life. But then, if you think that that fertilized egg is an actual human being, then you're killing that actual human being. So that's like a huge ethical dilemma that some of you may face. Hopefully not. Hopefully none of you have to face that. But that actually is the thing. There was a couple at church who we knew that actually happened to twice. They had to make that choice, and they chose to terminate the pregnancy and save the mom's life, which I believe is the right choice, because if you don't do anything, mom dies and baby dies. But it's one of those things. It's one of those gut checks. It's like, man, you like your relationship with God, your faith in His plan for your life has to be rock solid if you're going to go through something like that. All right, so then hopefully that doesn't happen, and the fertilized egg fertilized in the fallopian tube, and then it moves down into the actual body of the uterus, and we all remember that the inner layer of the uterus is called the endometrium. And I've already talked about this, so I won't beat a dead horse. But we have the whole menstrual cycle, right? And day one is first day of bleeding, lasts approximately 5 days on average. The chart here is a 28-day cycle, right? 20 to 40, 21 to 40 is normal, still within normal ranges, right? So then after the egg is fertilized, if the egg is fertilized, right, then it'll implant, into a healthy, prepared uterus. And then the uterus will develop the placenta and will nourish the egg. And then hopefully 9 months later, a baby is born. If not, then estrogen levels will fall, right? And then sloughing of the endometrium will continue, or will proceed actually. We already talked about that. Yeah, high estrogen endometrium is built back up to prepare for possible implantation. And then when there's a spike in follicle stimulating hormone and LH and estrogen, then that's ovulation. So let's see, where is that? Yep, right here. So that's why it's called follicle stimulating hormone, because doctors, scientists, researchers noticed that there was a spike and then a follicle ovary was released. So that's why it's, yeah, follicle stimulating hormone. And then falling estrogen levels, right? Yeah, cause the period to start, cause sloughing, and then higher estrogen levels, then that's gonna be built back up, right? So I think that's all, yep, that I want to talk about, because then the next slide is ways to steward, not conception, not fertility. Yeah, ways to steward fertility. So this has been Mr. Leo. Hopefully this has been informative and entertaining, and I will see you on the flip side.